Hello, welcome back to the Games Kingdom. My name's Carl King, and today we're going to be having a quick look at a game called Distilled. Now, I've just played through for the second time the solo mode of the game. You can play this 1 to 5 players. The best recommended player count is 3 if you're playing multiplayer, according to the current BGG rankings. But have yet to play it multiplayer. But as I say, this is my end of game second playthrough on the solo mode. And what you do is you get a series of cards which you have to achieve goals, and as you achieve those goals you move up the sort of ranks, and you get to the top one, and you've got to complete at least one of these on every single line from bottom to top. And you've also got to complete a game score, and that is determined by the card that you complete in row B of cards here, and also which one of the top 2 A cards that you also achieve at the end of the game. And to do the game, in the fact of sort of winning the game, you need to both complete a single card in each of the 5 rows, plus also beat the score when you add up your A and your B card. So in this instance, I was going for card here, this second one, A11, which is a 65 point card, and I'd also completed the B card, which had a value of 13, so my target score was 78. Now, I actually managed to get, luckily enough, 79 points. However, I didn't complete the top row, either of those particular cards, so I didn't manage to win the game. First game, I actually managed to complete all 5 rows of objective cards, but I didn't get enough points. So my target score in that game was 89 points, and I only scored 61 points. So I've scored more points this time, but I've completed 1 row less, which is the top row. And what you do with that is you get so many cards in each row. You get 2 A's, 3 C's, 4 B's, 2 C's, sorry, 3 C's and 2 C's. And then, as I said, you work from the bottom up, and each time you complete a goal, you put a coin on that card. You move one of the markers, the player markers that you're not using, one of the multiplayer markers, up per row, and that's the row that you're trying to achieve, just to sort of let you know which row that you are currently on. And as I say, you need to both complete all 5 rows with at least 1 objective card completed, but you also need to then add up your points, and you need to be able to beat that, and if you do both of those, then you've won the game. There is a card here that you can switch over, and basically you can swap over a couple of cards in 1 row once per game, but that will add 5 points to your target score. I did use that in the first game, but I didn't use that today. And basically what you do is when you move up each row, the card below, you then flick over the cards in the next row if they aren't already turned over from the start of the game, because there are certain rows that are already turned over when you start. You will know the top row objectives, you've got the bottom, and you've got all of the B's turned over, but the C in the second row and in the 4th row, all of those cards are blind, and you will need to choose one of the goals below, and then you flip those 2 cards over. But as I say, you can use this card here, and you could then switch 2 of the cards. So if you've got the easier objective that you're playing as your game, you could switch those cards across, and you would have a better chance potentially to achieve that row goal, and then you would move on again. But as I say, you can only do that once. So as you can see here, what we've got the player board. You get a distiller, a different one depending on which game card recipes that you are playing, and there are multiple recipes to use within the game, but each player in the multiplayer game uses the same recipe card, so you're all playing the same things, because it depends on which distillers that you can potentially choose from. It depends then what recipes come out for things like rum or whiskey, cachaça, vodka, moonshine, gin, brandy, etc. And that's all determined by the regions on the card. So my one for this first game was Angus Douglas from Scotland, and in the previous game I had a different distiller, but as I say, neither game I've won, but I thoroughly enjoyed playing through. For a comparison in a game that I've played certainly this year, I would say Earth is the closest. The only difference being that in Earth, when you're playing the round, everybody then takes a action depending on what your main action that you have taken. In this it's slightly different. You'll go around the table taking turns, but at a particular point in the turn when you're distilling, you can, once you've got used to the turns, you can do that all at the same time to sort of speed the game up a little bit. But for the first game, maybe the first couple of rounds, out of the 7 rounds that you will play, you're probably best doing it in turn order, so that you can also show and get all of the players around the table, if it's their first game, just used to how the game round sequence works. Everybody gets a nice little player aid card, so that will tell you what you do at the sort of stages of each part of the turn, and each turn is exactly the same. And then on the back you've got a end scoring sort of card and glossary of icons within the game, so you'll be able to see exactly what each icon on the card is actually telling you it is. So everybody gets one of those, and then as you play through the game, you're distilling depending on what recipe for what particular spirit you want to make. So everybody gets one of these clipboards, and you get one of these cards which is double-sided, and they've got letters in the top right hand corner. So you start, it recommends that you start off with the A region, so you'll get certain distillers because of that. And these are the 7 recipes that you can sort of brew and distill, and then you will also get your signature recipe depending on who your distiller is. So for Angus, his is a single malt whiskey, obviously being from Scotland, but depending on the region where your distiller comes from, you'll have a different signature recipe. It's classed as a gold recipe, and then obviously you will score points and bonuses if you do that. Now, some of the recipes, once you've distilled them, you have to sell them automatically and straight away, because you will be putting them in things like metal barrels, so you can't age stuff in metal barrels, certainly not in this game anyway. And then also you've got to have something to put them in and sell them in, so you'll get things like glass bottles, and there's a whole plethora of different things. So you've got sort of premium barrels, you get premium glasses, bottles, both glass and plastic. You get premium ingredients which are upgraded from the basic ones that you can buy. They are a bit more expensive, but they will also score you spirit stroke victory points. So you can purchase these during the initial market phase. And then there are also what are called distillery upgrades. So you can get distillery upgrades which are equipment, and you can get distillery upgrades which are specialists. And as I say, there's a whole host of these particular cards which you can purchase through the rounds, and you can sort of add them to your board. You get spaces on your board. As you'll see here, I managed to collect the worm tub, so during the distilling phase that allowed me to put 2 extra alcohol cards into the recipe. but you've got spaces here for a further 2. You can do more than that, but obviously you would have to get rid of one that you've already got from earlier in the game if you put a 4th one up. You've got some warehousing space here, and this is where you put your aged spirits. So some of them on the board, you will see the symbol where it says there is a little sort of hourglass without a sort of line through it, and if you try and or wish to distill any of those, they have to be aged in your warehouse for at least 1 turn. So you can't sell them straight away, but you put them into the warehouse. A lot of the others, if they've got the same symbol, the hourglass, but with a cross through it, that means you automatically have to sell them straight away after you've brewed them and distilled them successfully. But as you can see, the cards are different, so there are different things on the back of the A card. This is now the B side, and I think it goes up to about H. So there are different things, so a lot of different replayability in the game. You have to purchase these cubes depending on the colour of the cube symbol, and you've got bronze, silver or gold. Bronze costs 2, silver costs 4, and the gold costs 6. And when you purchase these, that then gives you the knowledge that you know the recipe to make that particular spirit. So as you can see there, I bought the cachaça recipe, and I bought one for rum. The one that you know already is your signature recipe, but you have to unlock your signature recipe ingredient. So you will start with this, but it won't be in your available sort of storeroom stroke pantry, because you have to get that, and the only way to do that is by distilling something else. And up on the top of this board, which I explained in the unboxing video, each time you get and distill a recipe successfully, you will get one of these little sort of tokens. It tells you on there what you need to do. So for that, there's a particular sugar. It has to be aged, and you have to age it at least 1 turn. And then when you do that, you get certain rewards. But the rewards are up here. So you can cover over these, and you will either be able to choose money or victory points. So each of these will give you 2 victory points. But you can get 5 money with this one. You can move your signature ingredient to your pantry, so that's how you would do that, and you would put it into there. You can discard a card from the pantry and take any 1 card from the truck. So the truck is basically the discard pile for those upgraded components. You can get 1 free premium ingredient. You can get 1 free premium cube recipe, so one of these. So it's a way of not spending 6 if you want to know one of the gold recipes. You get 1 free premium upgrade from the distillery upgrade pile, face up. And then the last one is 1 free equipment upgrade. So you know, you've got all of these sort of different things that you can put these on. And each game, depending on how your game is playing, you'll cover up different things as you get these recipes and distill these things. These are a finite sort of token system, so if they ever run out, you will still get or be able to sort of know the recipe and sort of get the points from it. You just won't get one of these tokens to cover this over. So in a game, there's only so many, depending on the amount of players in the game, there's only so many of these put out. So as I say, they are limited, so you need to obviously be aware that other people will be collecting these, and they could go before you try and do it. And if you've bought the recipe and then they run out, then obviously, as I said, you can still do that. You still get the bonuses, but you just can't take one of the tokens if they've all been taken already. You make your recipes up by putting all of your cards that you wish to enter into the washback, which is basically at least 1 water, 1 sugar and 1 yeast. And depending on how many sugars are in here, you add a free alcohol card. So there's a stack of these, they're all the same. You add one of each of these for every sugar card that's in your sort of recipe that you're trying to do. You mix all those cards up, and basically you're sitting there with a pile of cards. You will shuffle all of these cards, and you will basically find out what your actual thing that you've distilled is, because until you do this, even though you're trying to make, say, rum, you may come out with cards that not allow you to do that. So you'll have to look and say, oh, I haven't distilled rum, it's actually in the process and it has become something else. So when you do this and you're shuffling away, what you do is you remove the top card and put it back in your pantry, and you take the bottom card and put it back in your pantry. So that would have been one of those, sorry, not one of an item card. You only do that with ingredients, and then whatever's left, you check out what it is, and if you've got at least what it says is required, then you've done that particular recipe. So if this was going for rum, you need at least 2 plant sugars. So in here there are 2 sugars, but one is plant and one is grain based. So you would not have made what you wanted to make. So you will look at some of the others on here and it will say, oh, this one mustn't have any sugars in it, this one mustn't have any of this, and as long as you've got a cube on these, you could say, ah, I've done this because there's at least one of those. But obviously it also has some that aren't allowed. So with this, that would say that is required, but because it's got that in it as well, you haven't made this. So there are times when you may have done something and you've made nothing at all, because you either don't have the recipe, or you've got too many or not enough things in here, and that's just a wasted batch. So you know the ones with the ticks automatically, and then the others have to be purchased. So that's how you distill in the game, and it's the same process and the same game with all sort of effect as the multiplayer game. It's just that in the solo game you're trying to achieve these objectives and also the score points, and as long as you do both those, as I said earlier, you will then be classed as winning the game. So I've played this twice now, and unfortunately I've either done one or both, but not enough on both games, so I'm still looking for that first victory. But on sort of first playthrough of Distilled, it is an excellent game, one I think that I'm going to play again and again. This will stay in my collection certainly. I'm about to sort of in the next week or so get this to the table in at least a 3-player multiplayer game, and at some point I'd like to try the 4 and 5 players just to see how that affects the sort of playing of how it goes, the amount of things that you're going to have available, and then perhaps sort of switch out some of the different sort of recipe cards from just playing the sort of easy mode for some of these, you know, trying out maybe the sort of B side, and then sort of going through the whole sort of plethora of other things that are available for you to use within the game. In the game where you're playing a multiplayer, you also get some public objectives, which on the turn that somebody achieves it, if more than one person does it, great, you split the points. If not, one person gets all the points and you flip over that objective and nobody else can collect that objective of victory points for the rest of the game. So there are other things that you've got to keep an eye on, and you get one of those out for every player plus one. So in a 5-player game there will be 6 of those public objectives out there, but there are sort of 19 or 20, so again a lot of replayability. You're not going to get the same ones out every single game. So yeah, this is Distilled. Some very nice components. The boards are excellent, nice and thick card. The card for the sort of tokens are again very good quality, as you can see here and here. Cardboard coins, you can buy upgraded packs. These are nice chunky little sort of player tokens that you use to track your score, and then you've got some tokens here that once you hit 50 you put that out and you start just going round again, and then if you're lucky enough to get past 100 you just flip that over again. But once you're on there you just put that up on one of those and it shows everybody that your score there, like it is there, is 79. So you've got a few coins here, but you're going to be sort of spending these quite regularly, so you don't need a huge amount of these in the game. And again, there's enough of these going round, so you've got at least enough for 2 for everybody on most of these things. Some of them might not. I think there's only 9 gold ones there, so maybe if you've got a 5-player game and there's 2 gold on the recipe card, then obviously one person might not get both of those, but as they're quite expensive, not everybody's going to be buying them anyway. You might even have a game plan where you're just going to do a lot of the smaller and cheaper options, which will get you smaller victory points, but obviously will be easier to get because some of these have to sit in your warehouse for at least 1 turn, and you'll add things like flavour cards to them which will give you more points, but obviously you don't get any points until you sell them. So if you're not selling them and aging them, the longer you age them you'll get more points, but the only way to get money back in the game is to sell your spirits. So it's that sort of balance between, do I sell this round, do I age, what can I do with it? You can only distill 1 thing per turn, but you can sell more. So if you had 2 in the warehouse and then made a 3rd one, you could sell all 3 that turn and get a lot of points and a lot of coins, but that's very rare simply because you're limited on what you can do, and also there are only 7 turns in the game. You also get 3 personal objectives dealt to you at the beginning of the game, and at the end of the 3rd turn, before the 4th turn starts, you have to choose and discard one of those, and so you've only got 2, but they could potentially get you more points at the end of the game during end game scoring, depending on whether you've achieved what's on those objectives or not. But as I say, you get 3 at the start, and then at the end of turn 3 you get rid of one of those and you're just down to the 2. But that's the same for everybody. You don't use those in the solo mode, and you don't use the other public objectives in the solo mode either, simply because there's no need for that to be done because you've got these out here. So that's distilled, and for me it gets the Game Kingdom's Royal Seal of Approval. And until we come back with a review of how the multiplayer game went, it's bye for now.